Picture a world where two intelligent species share the Earth, not in some science fiction novel, but here on this very planet, a mere 45,000 years ago, when modern humans were not alone. Imagine standing at the mouth of a limestone cave in what would someday become southern France. The crisp air carries the scent of pine and distant wood smoke. Your breath forms clouds in the winter air. Behind you, shadows dance on ancient walls, cast by fires tended by beings both familiar and strange. Broader shoulders, prominent brow ridges, powerful hands, crafting tools with practiced precision. Neanderthals. These weren't the brutish caricatures we once imagined. They were a sophisticated people who had thrived in Europe and Western Asia for over 300,000 years, masters of their harsh Ice Age world. And somewhere, perhaps just across the valley, another fire burns. Around it gather your ancestors, Homo Sapiens. Recent arrivals from Africa, venturing into these northern lands with their own technologies, their own traditions. Two intelligent species, two kinds of minds, sharing a continent, sharing resources, and perhaps sharing more than we've long believed. For decades, the narrative seemed clear. Modern humans emerged from Africa, encountered Neanderthals, and the Neanderthals subsequently disappeared. A simple tale of replacement. But science has revealed a far more complex story. Genetic evidence now confirms what once seemed impossible. Not only did these two human species meet, they interbred. Many of us today carry Neanderthal DNA in our cells, silent testimony to ancient encounters. But the story grows more fascinating still. Archaeological evidence suggests these encounters weren't simply brief, isolated incidents. There are tantalizing hints of cultural exchange, of shared innovation, of lives intertwined across thousands of years. What was it like, this world of two humanities? Did they view each other as strange, as threatening? Or did they recognize their commonalities? Did they trade, cooperate, compete? Did they share stories around their fires? Tonight we journey back to this forgotten era of coexistence. We'll examine the evidence piece by piece, following the trail of artifacts, fossils, and genetic markers that illuminate this shadowy chapter of prehistory. We'll reconstruct as best we can what life might have been like during this remarkable period, when our species shared Earth with our closest evolutionary cousins, and we'll explore what their fate might tell us about ourselves. By the way, have you ever wondered if any of your own ancestors might have encountered Neanderthals? Let us know in the comments if you've ever had your DNA tested for Neanderthal heritage. The story begins with bones, fragments of ancient lives preserved in the earth. In 1856, miners working in Germany's Neander Valley uncovered strange remains. A skull cap with a prominent brow ridge, powerful bones unlike any they had seen. Scientists of the day declared these the remains of a pathological modern human, a diseased individual perhaps, or an ancient warrior wounded in battle. It would take decades before the truth emerged. These weren't abnormal Homo sapiens. They were normal representatives of another human species entirely, Homo neanderthalensis, people who had evolved in Europe and Western Asia, adapting perfectly to Ice Age conditions. For over a century after their discovery, Neanderthals were portrayed as primitive brutes, hunched, ape-like creatures, intellectually inferior to true humans. This view served a narrative of human exceptionalism, a comforting tale of our inevitable triumph. But science has a way of humbling our pretensions. Year by year, discovery by discovery, the Neanderthal image transformed. They stood fully upright. They had brains as large as ours, sometimes larger. Their tools showed sophistication and planning. Evidence mounted that they buried their dead, created art, used medicinal plants, cared for injured and elderly members of their groups. The gap between them and us narrowed with each new finding. Then came the revolution of ancient DNA analysis. In 2010, scientists published the first draft of the Neanderthal genome and made a stunning announcement. Many modern humans carry Neanderthal genetic material. We didn't simply replace them, we absorbed them. This revelation forces us to reconsider everything. The nature of our relationship with these ancient cousins, the story of our own origins. and fundamentally, what it means to be human in a world where humanity once came in different forms. Tonight we'll explore these questions together, reconstructing a lost world of coexistence, a time when the human story was more diverse, more complex than we ever imagined, a forgotten era when we were not alone. Chapter 2. Two species, one inheritance. Why does this matter? Why should we care about encounters between different human species tens of thousands of years ago? The answer lies partly in our DNA, partly in our identity, and partly in the mirror these ancient cousins hold up to ourselves. This isn't merely academic curiosity about the distant past, it's about understanding who we are. For many of us, particularly those with European or Asian ancestry, up to 2% of our genetic code comes from Neanderthals. We carry their legacy within us. That genetic inheritance has real consequences. Studies have linked Neanderthal DNA to everything from immune system function to skin and hair traits, from pain sensitivity to depression risk, from sleeping patterns to susceptibility to certain diseases. When COVID-19 swept across the world, researchers discovered something remarkable. Some Neanderthal gene variants increase the risk of severe illness. Others appear protective. Ancient DNA influencing a modern pandemic. But the stakes extend beyond genetics. This story challenges our deepest narratives about human uniqueness. For most of recorded history, we've told ourselves we stand alone. The lone intelligent species on Earth, fundamentally different from all other life. Now we know differently. For tens of thousands of years, multiple human species shared this planet, each with their own adaptations, their own cultures, perhaps their own ways of understanding the world. Our solitary status is a very recent phenomenon. If we truly shared the world with other thinking beings, not mythical creatures but real people with different evolutionary histories, how does that reshape our understanding of ourselves, of our place in nature, of what it means to be human? And if we interbred with these other humans producing fertile offspring who contributed to our modern gene pool, the boundaries between species grow blurry. The clean, simple story of human origins fractures into something more complex. This complexity extends to the moral dimension as well. If Neanderthals were sophisticated beings with their own societies, their own traditions, if they buried their dead and created art, if they possessed language and abstract thought, what was lost with their disappearance? Should we view their extinction as a tragedy, as the loss of a unique way of being human, as a cautionary tale about our own species' capacity to outcompete others, even those most similar to ourselves? The story also contains profound implications for how we view human differences today. Modern human populations show remarkable genetic similarity. The differences between so-called races are literally skin-deep, superficial adaptations to different environments, yet we once shared the world with humans genuinely different from ourselves, with a separate evolutionary history stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. And even then, we found enough common ground to interbreed to produce children together. What would our world be like if Neanderthals had survived? If modern society included two distinct human species, recognizably different, yet fundamentally similar? Would we have developed concepts of human rights that encompassed both forms of humanity? Or would we have constructed hierarchies justifying the domination of one type of human over another? Our treatment of Neanderthals in our imagination, as brutes, as lesser beings, perhaps reveals uncomfortable truths about ourselves. The stakes of this story are also scientific. Each new discovery about Neanderthals and their relationship with Homo sapiens reshapes our understanding of human evolution, forces us to abandon linear models where one species simply gives way to the next. Instead, we see a complex web of populations, separating, adapting to different environments, then reconnecting, exchanging genes and perhaps ideas. A messy, branching story of which our current human unity is just the latest chapter. For anthropologists, archaeologists, and geneticists, the evidence of Neanderthal-human interaction represents one of the most exciting frontiers in the study of human origins. Each new cave excavation, each ancient genome sequenced, has the potential to overturn established theories. The questions multiply. Did we learn from them? Did they learn from us? Did we compete for resources or find ways to share territories? Did we view each other as potential mates or as dangerous strangers? Did we absorb their knowledge of local environments as we moved into their territories? I'd love to know. Do you think humans today would treat another intelligent species fairly if we encountered one? Share your thoughts below. It's a fascinating ethical question. Recent findings suggest Neanderthals may have disappeared later than previously thought, possibly surviving in isolated pockets until as recently as 28,000 years ago. This would mean our species coexisted for over 10,000 years in Europe, a substantial period of potential interaction. For comparison, 10,000 years encompasses all of recorded human history, from the first cities to the present day. Did Neanderthals and humans share this much history together? What stories, what conflicts and cooperations, what exchanges might have occurred in such a time span? And then there's the most profound question of all. If they were so similar to us, intelligent cultural beings adapted to their environment, why did they disappear while we flourished? What fate befell our ancient relatives? And what does their extinction reveal about our own species? Tonight we'll explore these questions together, examining what science can tell us about this lost era of human diversity. When our ancestors shared Europe and Western Asia with their evolutionary cousins, and together shaped the future of humanity. Chapter 3: A Tale of Two Species. To understand the Neanderthal human story, we must first wind back the clock, not just thousands, but hundreds of thousands of years, to a time when the human family tree branched in different directions across the ancient landscapes of Africa, Europe, and Asia. Approximately 700,000 years ago, a population of early humans left Africa. These people, likely Homo heidelbergensis, spread across Europe and parts of Asia. There, isolated from African populations and adapting to colder northern climates, they began to evolve distinctive traits. By 400,000 years ago, the European population had developed features we would recognize as Neanderthal: robust bodies with barrel chests and powerful muscles, large noses to warm, cold air, prominent brow ridges above deep-set eyes. They were becoming specialized for Ice Age Europe. Meanwhile, back in Africa, other human populations continued their own evolutionary journey. By around 300,000 years ago, fossils begin to show features associated with Homo sapiens. Our species was emerging on the African continent, while Neanderthals refined their adaptations in Europe. For hundreds of thousands of years, these cousin species developed separately, each perfectly adapted to their environments, each developing technologies suited to their needs, each likely unaware of the other's existence. Neanderthals mastered the harsh conditions of Ice Age Europe. They developed sophisticated stone tools, what archaeologists call Mousterian technology. They became skilled hunters of large game like mammoth, woolly rhinoceros, and cave bear. They learned to control fire, to make pitch for hafting spears, to clothe themselves against the cold, to find shelter in caves and construct dwellings in the open. They weren't simply surviving in these harsh environments, they were thriving. We now know they had complex social structures. They cared for their injured, evidenced by healed injuries that would have required long-term support from others. They buried their dead with apparent ritual. They created jewelry and possibly cave art. They knew their territories intimately, which plants had medicinal properties, where to find flint for tool making, the migration patterns of the animals they hunted. They passed this knowledge down through generations, creating cultural traditions that lasted millennia. Then, between 60,000 and 50,000 years ago, something momentous occurred. Homo sapiens, our direct ancestors, began expanding out of Africa. Moving through the Middle East, they entered territories that Neanderthals had occupied for hundreds of thousands of years. These humans brought their own technologies, their own cultural traditions, their own adaptations. And for the first time since their evolutionary paths had diverged, the two species of humans came face to face. The meeting of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens represents one of the most extraordinary encounters in prehistory. Two intelligent species, recognizably similar yet distinct, each the product of hundreds of thousands of years of separate evolution, each with their own way of being human. What was this encounter like? Did they recognize each other as kin of some kind? Did they view each other with curiosity, with fear, with hostility? Did they communicate? We can only speculate, piecing together clues from the archaeological record. What we do know is that the encounter was consequential. Genetic evidence tells us interbreeding occurred, possibly multiple times. Archaeological evidence suggests possible cultural exchange, and within approximately 10,000 years of this contact, Neanderthals would disappear from the fossil record. The world of 45,000 years ago differed dramatically from our own. Europe existed in the grip of the last ice age. Vast ice sheets covered northern regions. Tundra and steppe extended across much of the continent. Forests retreated to southern refuges. This harsh landscape teemed with Ice Age megafauna. Herds of woolly mammoth, their massive bodies insulated with thick fur. Woolly rhinoceros with their impressive horns. Cave bears, larger than any modern bear species. Giant deer with antlers spanning 12 feet. The climate fluctuated. Periods of extreme cold alternated with slightly warmer intervals. These fluctuations forced both human species to adapt continuously, to be flexible in their survival strategies, to innovate or perish. Into this challenging world, small bands of Homo sapiens ventured from the Middle East. They likely followed coastlines and river valleys, moving in groups of perhaps 25 to 50 individuals. Extended family units bound by kinship and shared knowledge. These newcomers differed physically from the Neanderthals they encountered, taller, more slender frames, less muscular but more energy-efficient bodies, faces with smaller features, less pronounced brow ridges, higher, rounder skulls housing brains organized somewhat differently. By 45,000 years ago, these humans had reached Central Europe. The archaeological site of Bačko Čiro in Bulgaria contains some of the earliest definitive evidence of Homo sapiens in Europe, including stone tools, animal remains, and even human DNA. Other early sites include Peștera cu Oase in Romania, where human remains dating to about 42,000 years ago show evidence of recent Neanderthal ancestry, suggesting interbreeding had occurred just a few generations earlier. For thousands of years, both species occupied the European landscape. Sometimes in the same regions, possibly even the same valleys, their territories overlapping, creating opportunities for contact, for exchange, for conflict, for coexistence. We once thought this coexistence was brief, that modern humans quickly replaced Neanderthals through competition or conflict. But evidence now suggests a more complex, more interesting story of two human species sharing Europe for millennia. Have you ever wondered what you might have in common with a Neanderthal? It's fascinating to consider how much of their legacy might still be within us today. This wasn't a simple tale of replacement. It was a period of interaction. A unique moment in Earth's history when two different kinds of humans viewed each other across the firelight, when our species was not alone, when humanity came in different forms. On Chapter 4, First Traces of Contact. The first clues to this ancient encounter lay hidden for tens of thousands of years, buried in caves and rock shelters across Europe, encoded in our DNA, waiting for science to advance enough to reveal their secrets. One of the most remarkable early discoveries came not from a famous archaeological site, but from a tiny bone fragment found in a Siberian cave called Denisova. In 2010, scientists sequenced DNA from this fragment and revealed a third human species previously unknown to science. The Denisovans, as they came to be called, were relatives of Neanderthals who lived primarily in Asia. But the same research yielded another stunning revelation. The scientists had perfected techniques to extract and analyze ancient DNA, and soon turned these methods to Neanderthal remains. The results shattered our understanding of human history. Comparing Neanderthal genomes with those of modern humans revealed unmistakable evidence of interbreeding. Humans of European and Asian descent carry approximately 1–4% Neanderthal DNA in their genomes. This genetic evidence tells us something profound. Not only did our species meet, not only did we recognize each other as potential mates, but we produced fertile offspring who contributed their mixed ancestry to future generations. Subsequent genetic studies revealed even more details. The interbreeding wasn't a one-time event. It occurred multiple times, in multiple places. Different Neanderthal populations contributed DNA to different human populations as they expanded out of Africa. One of the most compelling individual stories comes from a 40,000-year-old human jawbone found in Peștera cu Oase, Romania. Genetic analysis revealed this individual had a Neanderthal ancestor just 4 to 6 generations back, a great-great-grandparent who was fully Neanderthal. This wasn't ancient history to this person. It was family history, recent enough that stories about this Neanderthal ancestor might have been passed down. That living members of the group might have remembered them. But genetics only tells part of the story. To understand the nature of Neanderthal-human interactions, we must turn to archaeology, to the material remains these ancient people left behind, tools, ornaments, living sites, and artwork that might reveal patterns of influence. For decades, archaeologists debated whether Neanderthals independently invented complex technologies and symbolic behaviors, or whether they copied these innovations from Homo sapiens. The chronology of discoveries proved critical to answering this question. Recent dating techniques have revealed that Neanderthals created cave art in Spain at least 65,000 years ago, long before Homo sapiens arrived in Europe. They painted abstract dots, lines, and handprints that suggest symbolic thinking, expression beyond mere survival needs. Similarly, Neanderthals crafted jewelry from eagle talons and seashells over 130,000 years ago, again, predating human arrival in their territories. These personal ornaments suggest aesthetic sensibility, possibly status marking, perhaps even symbolic communication. At Bruniquel Cave in France, archaeologists discovered something even more remarkable. Neanderthals had ventured deep into the darkness 170–6,500 years ago, breaking stalagmites and arranging them into circular structures, creating what appears to be a ritual space far from the cave entrance. These discoveries prove Neanderthals possessed complex cognitive abilities independent of human influence. They weren't simply primitive cousins awaiting our arrival to learn culture. They had their own traditions, their own symbolic systems, their own way of being human. But what happened when the two species did meet? Did they exchange ideas, technologies, or cultural practices? The archaeological evidence here becomes more ambiguous, more open to interpretation, more tantalizing. In some regions, new tool types appear in Neanderthal contexts just after humans arrived nearby. The Châtelperronian industry of France and northern Spain combines typically Neanderthal manufacturing techniques with forms more similar to human-made tools. Does this represent cultural exchange? Neanderthals learning from humans, or perhaps humans learning from Neanderthals, or independent innovation, coincidentally similar? Archaeologists continue to debate these possibilities. We see similar patterns in personal ornamentation. Neanderthals began using pigments more frequently around the time of human arrival. They collected unusual fossils and crystals with no obvious practical purpose. They created more body ornaments. Was this cultural transmission, or was it convergent evolution of similar practices? The chronology and distribution of these behaviors hold clues, but no definitive answers yet. What's remarkable is that we can even pose these questions, that we can trace these subtle patterns of potential influence across 40 millennia, that we can begin to reconstruct not just the fact of coexistence, but its texture and nature. Where were you watching from while learning about the Neanderthals? Let us know in the comments. We're curious to see how far this ancient story travels. The most compelling evidence for meaningful interaction comes from the oldest art in Europe. The cave paintings of El Castillo in Spain include hand stencils dated to 40,800 years ago, right at the cusp when both species inhabited the region. Made by pressing a hand against the cave wall and blowing pigment around it, these handprints are tantalizingly ambiguous. Their age places them precisely when both human and Neanderthal populations lived in the area. They could have been made by either species, or perhaps by individuals of mixed ancestry. The literal handprint of coexistence. More direct evidence comes from the Grotte du Renne in France. Here, Neanderthal remains were found alongside Châtelperronian tools and ornaments, showing potential human influence, suggesting Neanderthals who had contact with humans and adopted some of their cultural practices. As archaeological methods become more sophisticated, more such evidence emerges. Microscopic analysis of residues on tools reveals similar usage patterns between the species. Ancient DNA extracted from cave sediments shows where and when they occupied the same spaces. The picture grows clearer with each new study. But perhaps the most powerful evidence lies in our own bodies. The Neanderthal genes we carry weren't randomly incorporated. Natural selection appears to have favored some Neanderthal variants while eliminating others. We inherited what was beneficial, what helped us survive. These genes affect our immune systems, our metabolism, our skin and hair, our adaptation to non-African environments. They represent a biological exchange of survival information, a genetic legacy of ancient encounters. As we continue to explore this evidence, a remarkable possibility emerges: that Neanderthals didn't simply disappear, that they live on in part in us, that the encounter between our species resulted not in replacement, but in absorption, in integration. But this raises the most profound question of all. If the legacy of Neanderthals continues in our genes, our adaptations, perhaps even our cultures, why did they as a distinct people vanish from the earth? What happened during those millennia of coexistence that led to their disappearance? The answer may lie in subtle advantages, in birth rates rather than conflict, in social structures rather than superior technology, in diseases exchanged, in climate changes that favored one adaptive strategy over another, in the cumulative effect of many small differences over thousands of years, or perhaps something more dramatic occurred: a critical technological innovation, a shift in cognitive abilities, a cultural revolution that created an unbridgeable gap between the species, a catastrophic event that disproportionately affected Neanderthal populations. As we've excavated deeper into this lost world of two humanities, we've uncovered evidence that defies our expectations, that challenges our narratives, that reveals a more complex, more nuanced relationship between our species and our ancient cousins. But the greatest mystery remains unsolved. The fate of the Neanderthals, a highly successful human species that had thrived in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, coincides with the arrival of our ancestors. Was this coincidence? Or did our coming somehow seal their fate? The evidence we've examined so far provides tantalizing clues. But to truly understand what happened during this remarkable period of coexistence, to solve the mystery of the Neanderthals' disappearance, we must delve deeper into the details of how these two species lived, how they adapted, and ultimately, how one survived while the other vanished. Chapter 5. The Puzzle of Coexistence. As we delve deeper into the Neanderthal human story, certain contradictions emerge, pieces that don't quite fit the simple narrative, evidence that challenges our assumptions about these ancient encounters and forces us to reconsider what really happened during this extraordinary period. Consider the timeline of Neanderthal disappearance. The conventional view suggests that within a few thousand years of modern human arrival in Europe, Neanderthals vanished. A relatively rapid replacement, but recent discoveries have complicated this narrative considerably. In 2006, researchers redated Neanderthal remains from Gorham's Cave in Gibraltar. They were shocked to discover these Neanderthals survived until approximately 28,000 years ago, long after humans had established themselves throughout much of Europe, creating a much longer period of coexistence than previously thought. Similar findings have emerged from other sites. The picture now suggests a mosaic pattern, with Neanderthals disappearing from some regions while persisting in others, creating a patchwork of territories where the two species might have interacted over many thousands of years. This extended timeline poses a significant challenge to simple replacement theories. If humans possessed overwhelming advantages, why did it take so long for Neanderthals to disappear? What sustained this period of coexistence? What kind of equilibrium existed between the species? Another contradiction emerges when we examine population genetics. Early models suggested humans simply outcompeted Neanderthals, but genetic evidence indicates Neanderthal populations were already declining before human arrival, their genetic diversity decreasing, perhaps due to climate fluctuations or other environmental pressures. This suggests humans may have entered a Europe where Neanderthals were already struggling, not necessarily causing their extinction, but perhaps accelerating a process already underway, or taking advantage of ecological niches opening as Neanderthal populations contracted. Even more puzzling is the pattern of genetic exchange. Initial studies suggested gene flow was primarily one-directional, from Neanderthals into human populations. But newer research has identified human DNA in late Neanderthal genomes, indicating the exchange went both ways. This bidirectional gene flow implies repeated interactions over time, not a single encounter, but ongoing contact, perhaps even stable mixed communities where the two species lived alongside one another, sharing territories, resources, and eventually genetic material. The story grows more complex when we examine the specific Neanderthal genes that persist in modern humans. Many relate to the immune system, to skin and hair, to adaptation to non-African environments, suggesting these genes provided selective advantages to human populations. This raises an intriguing possibility. Perhaps humans didn't simply replace Neanderthals through competition. Perhaps the relationship was more complex, more cooperative than we've imagined, with humans adopting beneficial Neanderthal adaptations through interbreeding. The archaeological record contains its own contradictions. If humans possessed superior technology, why do we find sophisticated Neanderthal innovations like the production of birch tar adhesive? A complex multi-step process requiring advanced planning and temperature control. Similarly, evidence from sites like Skul and Kafse in Israel shows modern humans using Mousterian-style tools typically associated with Neanderthals. Were they learning from Neanderthals? Was technology transfer bidirectional? Were the technological differences less significant than we've assumed? Perhaps the most puzzling contradiction involves symbolic behavior. We once thought symbolism, art, ornaments, ritual, marked the cognitive gulf between humans and Neanderthals. But discoveries have erased this supposed boundary. Neanderthals created cave art, jewelry, and possibly ritual spaces. If Neanderthals possessed symbolic thinking, language, and cultural transmission of knowledge, if the cognitive differences were subtle rather than fundamental, what really distinguished the two species? And why did one ultimately vanish while the other thrived? Tell us in the comments what you find most surprising about Neanderthals. Many people are shocked to learn they weren't the primitive brutes once portrayed. Consider another anomaly: the distribution of Neanderthal DNA in modern humans. People from East Asia carry slightly more Neanderthal ancestry than Europeans do. Despite Neanderthals being primarily a European species, this unexpected pattern demands explanation. One hypothesis suggests multiple waves of human migration out of Africa, with different populations encountering different Neanderthal groups. Another proposes selection pressures varied by region, preserving more Neanderthal DNA in some populations than others. The chronology of interbreeding presents another puzzle. Genetic evidence suggests contact occurred as early as 100,000 years ago, well before the main human migration out of Africa around 60,000 years ago, implying earlier, lesser-known human expansions that have left little archaeological trace. These early encounters remain mysterious. Where did they occur? How extensive were they? Did they establish patterns of interaction that would characterize later contacts? The evidence is fragmentary, but suggests a more complex history than we've traditionally recognized. Further anomalies appear when we examine specific archaeological sites. At Vindija Cave in Croatia, archaeologists discovered sophisticated bone tools in Neanderthal contexts. Initially, these were attributed to human influence, but improved dating techniques showed they predated human arrival. Similar situations have emerged at other sites. behaviors once considered exclusively human have been found in purely Neanderthal contexts, forcing us to reconsider our assumptions about Neanderthal capabilities and about what, if anything, made humans distinctive. Perhaps the most perplexing anomalies involve the last Neanderthals, those who lived during the period of coexistence with humans. Their tools became more diverse, their ornaments more common, their use of pigments more widespread. Were they learning from humans, responding to competition? Or does this pattern reflect something more profound? Cultural exchange between the species, a blending of traditions as the populations themselves blended. The archaeological record alone cannot answer these questions definitively, but it suggests complexity rather than simple replacement. Consider the Châtel-Perronian industry, sophisticated tools found in late Neanderthal contexts in France and northern Spain. These combine typically Neanderthal manufacturing techniques with forms reminiscent of human-made tools. Were Neanderthals innovating independently or learning from human neighbors? For years, archaeologists debated whether Neanderthals created these tools themselves or acquired them through trade. Recent work confirms Neanderthals as the makers, but the timing, coinciding with human arrival nearby, suggests possible influence. Cultural transmission across species boundaries. This possibility of cultural exchange introduces another anomaly. If Neanderthals could adopt human innovations and humans could learn from Neanderthals, if both species were flexible, adaptive learners, why did humans ultimately prevail? What subtle advantage made the difference over millennia? Some researchers point to demographic factors. Evidence suggests humans maintained larger social networks than Neanderthals, more extensive trading relationships, connecting groups across greater distances, perhaps providing greater resilience during environmental crises. Others highlight possible differences in reproductive rates. Subtle anatomical differences suggest Neanderthal women may have had longer intervals between births than human women. Over generations, even a small difference could have significant demographic consequences, slowly shifting the population balance. The anomalies extend to the realm of language. We once assumed Neanderthals lacked complex speech, but anatomical studies show they possessed the physical equipment for articulate language, including a hyoid bone virtually identical to our own. Genetic evidence supports this possibility. Neanderthals carried the FOXP2 gene, often called the language gene, in a form similar to modern humans, suggesting they possessed the genetic foundation for complex communication. For storytelling, teaching, planning, if Neanderthals spoke, what languages did they use? Did humans and Neanderthals develop ways to communicate across species boundaries? Did bilingual individuals facilitate exchange between groups? The linguistic dimension of coexistence remains tantalizingly obscure. As we examine these contradictions and anomalies, a more nuanced picture emerges. Not a simple tale of replacement, but a complex story of interaction, exchange, and gradual absorption. A story where the boundaries between us and them blur across millennia. This blurring forces us to reconsider our assumptions about human uniqueness, about the nature of our evolutionary journey, and about what truly happened during that extraordinary period when two human species shared the Earth. Chapter 6. Whispers Across Time. Beyond the archaeological record and genetic evidence lies another dimension of the Neanderthal human story, the realm of myth, folklore, and cultural memory. Could ancient encounters with Neanderthals have left imprints in our oldest stories? Could traditional knowledge preserve echoes of this lost world? Across Europe, folklore contains accounts of wild people, forest-dwelling beings, human-like but different, stronger, more primitive, dwelling in caves or remote mountainous regions. These traditions appear in Germanic, Celtic, Slavic, and other European mythologies. The Germanic tradition speaks of woodwoses, or wild men of the woods, hairy, powerful beings skilled in hunting but lacking human sophistication. Medieval art depicts them as humans with excessive body hair, often wielding clubs, neither fully animal nor fully human. In Basque mythology, We find stories of Basajaun, lords of the woods, large powerful beings covered in hair who protected flocks and taught humans agricultural skills. They lived in mountain caves and forests, avoiding human settlements, but occasionally interacting with people. Similar figures appear in folklore across the continent. Russian legends speak of legacies, forest spirits with human and animal characteristics. Celtic traditions tell of the woodwoes or wild man. Slavic myths describe various forest beings straddling the human-non-human boundary. Could these widespread traditions preserve cultural memories of Neanderthal encounters, of another kind of human sharing the landscape? The geographic distribution is suggestive, strongest in regions where Neanderthals persisted longest. The timing presents difficulties for this hypothesis. Most recorded folklore dates from the Middle Ages or later, far removed from the Neanderthal era, but oral traditions can persist over remarkably long periods, especially when embedded in cultural practices and origin stories. More intriguing still are the attributes assigned to these mythological beings, often described as physically powerful but less sophisticated than humans, possessing deep knowledge of local environments, occasionally interbreeding with humans. Parallels with Neanderthals are hard to ignore. Some traditions even suggest these beings taught humans specific skills: how to make fire, which plants had medicinal properties, how to hunt certain animals. Cultural exchanges that mirror what might have occurred between humans and Neanderthals. Of course, we must be cautious about such interpretations. Human imagination creates similar mythological beings across cultures, embodying the boundary between human and non-human, between civilization and wilderness. These archetypes need not derive from actual encounters, yet the specific clustering of these traditions in Europe, their common features, their resemblance to what we now know about Neanderthals, at minimum, they offer a provocative possibility that some echo of coexistence might have reverberated through human cultural memory. Beyond folklore lies another category of potential evidence: anomalous archaeological findings that don't fit neatly into our chronology of Neanderthal-human interaction. Discoveries that challenge conventional narratives about when and how the species interacted. Consider the Venus of Hohlefels, a small ivory figurine discovered in Germany, dating to approximately 40,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest known examples of figurative art. Created just as humans were establishing themselves in a landscape still inhabited by Neanderthals. I've always wondered, have you ever noticed similarities between ancient folklore creatures and what we now know about Neanderthals? Share your thoughts below if any traditional stories come to mind. The sophistication of this artwork is remarkable. Appearing fully formed without simpler precursors in the region, did humans bring this tradition with them? Or did it emerge through interaction with the artistic traditions of local Neanderthals? The chronology remains puzzling. Similarly, the spectacular cave paintings at Chauvet in France date to around 32,000 years ago. They show extraordinary technical skill and artistic vision, appearing with remarkable suddenness in the archaeological record. During the period when both species coexisted in Europe, was this artistic flowering purely a human innovation, or did it emerge through cross-fertilization of ideas, through humans and Neanderthals sharing symbolic traditions? The timing is suggestive, though far from conclusive. Another category of anomalous evidence involves transitional industries, tool types that combine elements of Neanderthal and human technologies. The Châtel-Perronian in France and Spain, the Uluzzian in Italy, the Celetian in Central Europe, each blending different technological traditions. For decades, archaeologists debated who created these transitional tool types. Recent evidence suggests at least some were made by Neanderthals, but the timing, coinciding with human arrival, and the hybrid nature of the technology suggest cultural transmission between species. This raises profound questions about the nature of cultural boundaries, about how knowledge moved between different human populations, and about the cognitive abilities of Neanderthals, who could apparently adopt and adapt new technological ideas. Perhaps the most puzzling, out-of-place evidence comes from genetic studies of particular Neanderthal individuals. The Neanderthal remains from Vindija Cave in Croatia, dating to around 45,000 years ago, show evidence of human DNA, indicating interbreeding had occurred in the opposite direction. This suggests a more complex relationship than we'd imagined. Not just humans incorporating Neanderthal genes, but Neanderthals incorporating human genetics. A two-way exchange that implies sustained interaction rather than brief encounters. Even more surprising was the discovery at Denisova Cave in Siberia, where researchers found a bone fragment belonging to a young female. Genetic analysis revealed her mother was Neanderthal and her father was Denisovan. A first-generation hybrid between two distinct human species. While not directly involving Homo sapiens, this finding demonstrates that interbreeding between different human species wasn't rare or accidental. It occurred regularly enough to be detected in our limited fossil sample, suggesting the boundaries between human species were quite permeable. These genetic anomalies force us to reimagine the social dynamics of the Pleistocene world. Perhaps different human groups recognized each other as potential mates despite physical differences. Perhaps hybrid zones existed where populations met and mingled. Perhaps species boundaries meant something different in the lived experience of these ancient people. The material record contains other puzzling elements. In some late Neanderthal sites, archaeologists have found ornaments made from eagle talons, shells, and animal teeth, similar to ornaments made by contemporary humans. But using local materials and techniques, do these represent independent invention, cultural exchange, or perhaps evidence of mixed communities where Neanderthals and humans lived together, sharing traditions? The archaeological record alone cannot answer these questions definitively. At El Cidrón Cave in Spain, DNA extracted from Neanderthal teeth revealed something unexpected. These individuals had consumed medicinal plants, including a form of penicillin mold and pain-relieving herbs, suggesting sophisticated botanical knowledge, awareness of specific plant properties. Was this knowledge developed independently? Or might it represent information exchange with humans? Did knowledge of medicinal plants flow between the species? Did Neanderthals teach humans about local medicinal resources as our ancestors moved into new territories? Certain Mediterranean cave sites present particularly intriguing evidence. At Gorham's Cave in Gibraltar, archaeologists found abstract engravings made by Neanderthals, a crosshatch pattern deliberately carved into the rock. Dating to more than 39,000 years ago, similar abstract markings appear in early human sites across Europe. Raising questions about symbolic communication, was this a universal human impulse emerging independently in different populations? Or evidence of shared symbolic traditions? Of ideas moving between different human groups? These archaeological and genetic anomalies don't fit neatly into simple narratives about human-Neanderthal interaction. They suggest complexity, nuance, and sustained contact. They hint at a lost world more diverse and interconnected than we've traditionally imagined. Combined with the whispers preserved in folklore and myth, these anomalies outline the shadowy contours of an extraordinary period, when different human species not only shared the Earth, but shared ideas, genes, and perhaps even communities, a chapter of our story we're only beginning to recover. Chapter 7. The Vanishing. As we assemble the fragments of evidence, as we piece together clues from genetics, archaeology, and perhaps even folklore, the central mystery deepens. Why did Neanderthals vanish? What ultimately led to the disappearance of these sophisticated, well-adapted people? This isn't merely an academic question about the distant past. It strikes at the heart of what it means to be human, of how we relate to those different from ourselves, and of our species' impact on the world we inhabit. For if Neanderthals were truly like us in fundamental ways, if they created art, buried their dead, cared for their sick, and possessed language, if the differences were of degree rather than kind, then their disappearance represents the loss of a unique way of being human. The stakes of this mystery extend beyond anthropology. They touch on existential questions, about human uniqueness, about our relationship with those we perceive as other, and about what happens when different kinds of minds, different evolutionary histories come into contact. For most of the 20th century, the prevailing explanation was simple: competition. Modern humans with superior technology and cognitive abilities outcompeted Neanderthals for resources. The stronger replaced the weaker in a straightforward evolutionary process, but this explanation now appears overly simplistic. If humans possessed overwhelming advantages, why did Neanderthals persist for so long after contact? Why do we find evidence of cultural exchange and interbreeding? Why didn't replacement happen more rapidly? More recent models suggest a complex interplay of factors. No single cause, but a perfect storm of pressures that gradually reduced Neanderthal populations below the threshold of viability. A confluence of climate change, demographic patterns, and subtle competitive disadvantages. Climate fluctuations during this period were dramatic. The last ice age brought rapid shifts between colder and warmer phases. These changes transformed ecosystems, altering the distribution of plants and animals that both human species relied upon for survival. Neanderthals had successfully adapted to cold conditions over hundreds of thousands of years. But the rapid oscillations of the late Pleistocene may have tested even their remarkable adaptability, creating ecological stress precisely when a new human species was entering their territories. Genetic evidence suggests Neanderthal populations were already declining before human arrival, their genetic diversity decreasing, indicating smaller, more isolated groups. Perhaps due to these climate pressures, making them more vulnerable when humans appeared on the scene. Demographic patterns may have played a crucial role. Analysis of Neanderthal skeletons suggests they had longer childhoods than Homo sapiens, potentially longer intervals between births, and possibly shorter lifespans. Creating a reproductive disadvantage over generations, even a small difference in birth rates would have significant consequences over time. If human women had children slightly more frequently than Neanderthal women, human populations would gradually grow larger, shifting the balance between the species across centuries and millennia. Have you ever wondered if Neanderthals might still exist today if circumstances had been slightly different? I'm curious what you think our world would look like with two human species. Social structure may have been another critical factor. Archaeological evidence suggests humans maintained larger social networks than Neanderthals, trading materials over greater distances, connecting larger groups across wider territories, creating more resilient populations. This social structure might have provided humans with critical advantages during environmental crises. Access to resources across diverse environments, knowledge sharing across larger networks, greater flexibility when local conditions deteriorated, more potential marriage partners. Disease might have played an underappreciated role. As humans moved out of Africa, they likely carried pathogens to which Neanderthals had no immunity. Similar to the devastating impact of European diseases on indigenous American populations thousands of years later. Genetic evidence supports this possibility. Some Neanderthal genes that persist in modern humans are related to immune function, suggesting these genes helped incoming human populations resist local diseases. While Neanderthals may have had no such protection against African pathogens, technological differences, while less dramatic than once thought, may still have contributed. Humans appear to have had more specialized tools, more effective projectile weapons for hunting, perhaps allowing them to capture prey more efficiently, with less physical risk. Over time, these subtle advantages could have shifted the ecological balance, with humans gradually outcompeting Neanderthals for key resources, not through direct conflict, but through more efficient exploitation of the same environments, slowly reducing the carrying capacity for Neanderthal populations. As Neanderthal groups became smaller and more isolated, their genetic diversity would have decreased further, making them more vulnerable to inbreeding, to disease, to random population fluctuations, a downward spiral leading ultimately to extinction. But this demographic decline wasn't the whole story, because simultaneously another process was underway. As the evidence for interbreeding makes clear, some Neanderthals were being absorbed into human populations. Their genes, their adaptations, perhaps even their cultural knowledge incorporated into our lineage. This raises a profound possibility. Perhaps Neanderthals didn't simply vanish, perhaps they transformed, their distinctive features gradually blending into the human population through repeated interbreeding, their separate identity fading not through replacement but through merger. If this scenario is accurate, it transforms our understanding of human evolution. The emergence of modern humans wasn't a simple linear process, but a complex reticulation, a braiding together of different human lineages, with Neanderthal contributions woven into our genetic fabric. This perspective also transforms how we should view Neanderthals, not as evolutionary failures who couldn't compete, but as a highly successful human lineage whose adaptations were valuable enough to be incorporated into our own genome, whose legacy continues in our DNA. The mystery deepens further when we consider the timing of Neanderthal disappearance across different regions. They vanished first from the Middle East around 50,000 years ago, then from Eastern and Central Europe, persisting longest in Western Europe, particularly in Iberia. This pattern roughly follows the path of human migration into Europe, suggesting direct connection between human arrival and Neanderthal disappearance. But the extended timeline, thousands of years of coexistence in each region, indicates a gradual rather than rapid process. What was happening during these millennia of shared territories? Were the species in direct competition? Were they largely avoiding each other, occupying different ecological niches? Were they trading, communicating, learning from one another? Were they forming mixed communities? The evidence suggests all of these scenarios might have occurred in different regions at different times. The relationship wasn't static or uniform, but dynamic, evolving as both populations adapted to each other's presence. As individuals from both groups interacted in diverse ways, as Neanderthal populations declined, what happened to their cultural knowledge, their understanding of local environments built over hundreds of thousands of years, their technological innovations, their symbolic traditions? Was this knowledge lost or somehow preserved? Some researchers suggest knowledge transfer occurred alongside genetic exchange, that humans moving into Europe learned from Neanderthals, adopting their techniques for surviving in cold environments, their knowledge of local resources, their technological innovations. If so, Neanderthals may have contributed not only to our genome, but to our cultural heritage as well. Their legacy, preserved not just in our DNA, but in traditions, technologies and knowledge that helped our species flourish in the challenging environments of Ice Age Europe. This possibility transforms the stakes of our investigation. We're not simply studying a failed branch of human evolution, but recovering a lost chapter of our own story, recognizing the multi-species heritage that shaped who we are today, the diverse streams that flow into the river of humanity. As we approach the culmination of our journey, the evidence converges on a remarkable conclusion. The relationship between humans and Neanderthals wasn't simply one of competition and replacement, but of interaction, exchange, and ultimate absorption, a complex dance across thousands of years. What began as two separate species, with different evolutionary histories and adaptations, gradually merged through repeated contact, through cultural exchange, through interbreeding, until only one remained, not purely Homo sapiens, but a hybrid population carrying Neanderthal heritage. This reframes the central question of our investigation, not why Neanderthals went extinct, but why they lost their distinct identity. Why the hybrid zone between the species eventually collapsed, why the spectrum of human diversity narrowed to a single species. The answer may lie in the accumulated effects of subtle advantages, in demographic patterns playing out across millennia, in the gradual absorption of Neanderthal populations into the more numerous human groups, until their distinctive features faded from the Earth. But as we'll see in the next section of our exploration, this process may have been more complex than we've realized. The evidence suggests unexpected twists in the story, patterns that challenge our assumptions, and mysteries that remain unsolved to this day. For while the physical form of Neanderthals may have vanished from the Earth, their genetic and possibly cultural legacy lives on, in our adaptations, in our immune systems, perhaps even in aspects of our behavior and cognition that we've yet to fully recognize. And most tantalizing of all, There are hints that the story doesn't end with the last pure Neanderthals, that the hybrid descendants of humans and Neanderthals may have played a crucial role in subsequent human history, a hidden chapter waiting to be revealed. Chapter 8: Shadows and Whispers. As we've explored the mysterious relationship between humans and Neanderthals, several competing theories have emerged to explain their disappearance, each supported by evidence, each offering a different perspective on this pivotal chapter in human history, each with profound implications for how we understand ourselves. The first major theory could be called the competitive replacement model. It suggests humans simply outcompeted Neanderthals through superior technology, social organization, or cognitive abilities, not necessarily through direct conflict, but through more efficient exploitation of the same resources. This view has deep roots in paleoanthropology. For decades, it represented the consensus explanation. Humans were simply better adapted, more innovative, more flexible. Neanderthals couldn't keep up and gradually lost ground in the struggle for survival. Evidence supporting this theory includes the timing of Neanderthal disappearance, which roughly follows the path of human expansion into Europe, technological differences in hunting weapons, with humans developing more sophisticated projectiles, and the ultimate outcome: one species survived while the other vanished. Proponents point to subtle cognitive differences between the species. Human tools show greater diversity and specialization. Human social networks appear more extensive, with materials traded over greater distances. Human populations may have maintained larger group sizes and more complex social structures. However, this theory has weakened as evidence of Neanderthal sophistication has mounted. Their technological abilities, symbolic behavior, and adaptive skills appear more impressive than previously recognized. The cognitive gap between the species seems narrower than once thought. Competitive advantage, less clear-cut. The second major theory might be called the absorption model. It suggests Neanderthals didn't simply die out. They were gradually absorbed into the larger human population through interbreeding. Their distinctive physical features diluted over generations until they were no longer recognizable as separate. Genetic evidence provides strong support for this view. All non-African populations today carry Neanderthal DNA. Genetic modeling suggests multiple interbreeding events across different regions and timeframes. Some Neanderthal variants were actively selected for and maintained in human populations. The discovery of first-generation hybrids in the fossil record, individuals with one Neanderthal and one human parent, confirms that interbreeding wasn't rare or incidental. It occurred regularly enough to be detected, despite our limited sample of ancient remains. This model suggests a more complex, less adversarial relationship between the species. Not simply competition, but interaction. Not replacement, but merger. The legacy of Neanderthals continuing in our own genome, their adaptations incorporated rather than eliminated. If you've ever had your DNA tested, did it show any Neanderthal ancestry? Most people of non-African descent carry some Neanderthal genes. Share what percentage you discovered if you know. However, absorption alone cannot fully explain the Neanderthal disappearance. If interbreeding was common and produced fertile offspring, why did distinctly Neanderthal populations eventually vanish completely? Why didn't a spectrum of physical forms persist, rather than converging on modern human appearance? Our third theory combines elements of both previous models with environmental factors. The perfect storm hypothesis suggests no single cause for Neanderthal extinction, but a convergence of pressures. Climate fluctuations, demographic patterns, subtle competitive disadvantages, and gradual absorption. This more nuanced view acknowledges the complexity of the evidence, the extended timeline of coexistence, the regional variations in when Neanderthals disappeared, the genetic exchange between populations, the environmental context of the late Pleistocene. Climate data reveals dramatic fluctuations during this period, rapid shifts between colder and warmer phases that transformed European ecosystems, creating resource stress precisely when a new human species was entering Neanderthal territories. Genetic evidence suggests Neanderthal populations were already declining before human arrival. their genetic diversity decreasing, perhaps due to these climate pressures, making them more vulnerable to additional challenges when humans appeared on the scene. Demographic factors may have been decisive. Even slight differences in birth rates would have significant consequences over thousands of years. If human women had children slightly more frequently than Neanderthal women, human populations would gradually outnumber Neanderthals. This numerical imbalance would have accelerated the absorption process. As Neanderthal groups became smaller and more isolated, interbreeding with the more numerous humans would have increasingly diluted their distinctive features. A gradual genetic swamping rather than replacement. Disease may have played a crucial role. Humans moving out of Africa likely carried pathogens to which Neanderthals had no immunity, creating a biological disadvantage independent of any cognitive or technological differences between the species. Significantly, some Neanderthal genes that persist in modern humans relate to immune function, suggesting these genes helped incoming human populations resist local European diseases. While Neanderthals may have had no such protection against African pathogens, social structure differences appear increasingly important in recent research. Archaeological evidence suggests humans maintained larger group sizes and more extensive networks than Neanderthals, trading materials over greater distances, connecting communities across wider territories. These broader networks might have provided crucial advantages during environmental crises, access to resources across diverse landscapes, knowledge sharing between groups, greater resilience when local conditions deteriorated, more potential mates when populations declined. Each of these theories captures part of the truth. None alone provides a complete explanation. The reality likely combines elements of all three, with different factors predominating in different regions and timeframes. A complex mosaic rather than a simple narrative. What emerges is a picture of gradual decline rather than sudden extinction. Neanderthal populations slowly contracting, becoming more isolated, interbreeding with the more numerous humans when they encountered them. Their distinctive features and adaptations gradually absorbed into the human lineage. This perspective transforms our understanding of human evolution. Not a linear march of progress where superior forms replace inferior ones, but a complex interweaving of lineages, a braiding together of different human populations. With Neanderthal contributions incorporated into our own genetic heritage, it also transforms how we should view Neanderthals themselves, not as evolutionary failures who couldn't compete, but as a highly successful human lineage whose adaptations were valuable enough to be preserved in our genome, whose legacy continues in our biology. This more nuanced understanding raises profound questions about human uniqueness, about our relationship with those we perceive as different from ourselves, and about the nature of our evolutionary journey, questions that continue to resonate in our own time. Chapter 9. Beyond the Bones. Recent scientific advances have dramatically expanded our understanding of Neanderthal-human interactions. Techniques unimaginable a generation ago now allow us to extract ancient DNA from fossils, cave sediments, and even water from caves. To reconstruct genomes, proteins, and migration patterns with extraordinary precision, perhaps most revolutionary has been the ability to sequence ancient DNA. Not just from well-preserved bones, but from minute fragments that have survived tens of thousands of years, even from soil samples where no visible remains exist. Opening windows into the past previously thought impossible. The Neanderthal genome, first sequenced in 2010, transformed our understanding. Comparison with modern human genomes revealed approximately 1–4% Neanderthal DNA in all non-African populations. Concrete evidence of interbreeding that could not be explained away. A genetic legacy spanning millennia. Subsequent research has refined this picture, showing multiple interbreeding events across different regions, different Neanderthal populations contributing to different modern human lineages, a complex pattern of interaction rather than a single historical encounter. Even more surprising was the discovery that interbreeding went both ways. Late Neanderthals from Europe show evidence of human DNA in their genomes. indicating that gene flow occurred in both directions. That genetic exchange was reciprocal rather than one-sided. This bidirectional gene flow suggests sustained interaction over time, not random encounters, but ongoing contact. Perhaps even stable mixed communities where the two species lived alongside one another, sharing territories, resources, and eventually genetic material. We've also learned that natural selection acted on this shared genetic heritage. Some Neanderthal genes were rapidly eliminated from human populations, apparently harmful, while others were actively selected for, providing benefits. Our genome was shaped by what worked, regardless of source. The specific Neanderthal genes that persisted tell a fascinating story. Many relate to the immune system, helping humans adapt to new pathogens. Others affect skin and hair, potentially aiding adaptation to northern climates. Still others influence metabolism, skull shape, and pain perception. One of the most surprising recent discoveries involves COVID-19. Researchers found that a gene variant affecting susceptibility to severe COVID comes from Neanderthals. Ancient DNA influencing our experience of a modern pandemic, the past reverberating in the present. The question of Neanderthal language abilities has seen dramatic new insights. Beyond the anatomical evidence, the hyoid bone and vocal tract structure, genetic analysis now suggests they possessed key genes associated with language development, including the famous FOXP2 language gene. Wondering if any other viewers are as fascinated by ancient DNA as I am? Let me know in the comments what aspect of Neanderthal genetics you find most surprising. Brain imaging studies of Neanderthal skull casts have revealed both similarities and differences in brain structure. Similar overall size but different proportions, with implications for cognitive abilities that remain hotly debated. A different but not necessarily inferior kind of mind. New archaeological techniques have yielded equally stunning revelations. Microscopic analysis of stone tools can now reveal how they were used. Residue analysis identifies materials processed. Use-wear patterns demonstrate sophisticated manufacturing techniques, expanding our understanding of Neanderthal capabilities. Dating methods have become more precise, allowing researchers to establish more accurate chronologies, to determine exactly when Neanderthals disappeared from different regions, to correlate these disappearances with climate events and human arrivals, to track the timing of cultural innovations. These improved dates have revealed that Neanderthals created cave art at least 65,000 years ago. Long before Homo Sapiens arrived in Europe, they placed handprints on cave walls, drew abstract symbols, and created compositions that suggest symbolic thinking, challenging old assumptions about cognitive differences. Similarly, Neanderthals created jewelry and body ornaments over 130,000 years ago, using eagle talons, shells, and animal teeth. These weren't practical tools, but symbolic objects, suggesting aesthetic sensibility and possibly status marking. Another boundary between the species dissolving. Analysis of ancient proteins has opened yet another window into the past, allowing identification of species from fragmentary remains, revealing diet composition from dental calculus, even identifying specific individuals as Neanderthal, human, or hybrid when DNA preservation is poor. But perhaps most fascinating are the paradoxes that emerge from this new science. The contradictions that challenge our neat categories and linear narratives. The complexities that defy simple explanations about who Neanderthals were and why they disappeared. Consider the paradox of Neanderthal extinction despite interbreeding. If the two species could produce fertile offspring, the biological definition of belonging to the same species, why did distinctively Neanderthal populations eventually disappear completely? This challenges our understanding of species boundaries, of how populations merge or remain distinct. It suggests factors beyond biological compatibility influenced the outcome. Perhaps cultural differences, or the simple mathematics of demographic absorption by the more numerous humans. Another paradox. If Neanderthals possessed language, art, and symbolic thinking, the hallmarks of modern human cognition, what cognitive differences, if any, existed between the species? What subtle distinctions in how their minds worked might have influenced their ultimate fate? Some researchers suggest differences in social structure rather than individual cognition. Neanderthals may have maintained smaller groups with less connection between communities, creating less resilient populations during environmental crises, a social rather than cognitive distinction. The paradox of Neanderthal capabilities extends to technology. They created some tools requiring more complex manufacturing processes than contemporary human tools, like birch tar adhesive, which requires careful temperature control. Yet their overall toolkit was less diverse. Why this pattern? Perhaps most puzzling is the paradox of timing. Neanderthals had successfully inhabited Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, surviving multiple ice ages and interglacial periods. Why did they disappear precisely when humans arrived? Coincidence or causation? New research suggests Neanderthal populations were already declining before human arrival. Due to climate fluctuations or other environmental factors, human presence may have simply accelerated a process already underway, or introduced new pressures that proved decisive. The distribution of Neanderthal DNA in modern humans presents another paradox. East Asians carry slightly more Neanderthal ancestry than Europeans, despite Neanderthals being primarily a European species. This unexpected pattern requires explanation, suggesting complex migration histories. One hypothesis proposes multiple waves of human migration out of Africa, each encountering different Neanderthal populations. Another suggests selection pressures varied by region, preserving more Neanderthal DNA in some populations than others. The story grows more complex with each discovery. Perhaps the greatest paradox involves our own identity. If we carry Neanderthal genes, if these genes influence our biology in meaningful ways, if Neanderthals were not replaced but partially absorbed, then who are we really? How should we understand our own origins? The clean, linear story of human evolution, from primitive ancestors to modern Homo sapiens, dissolves into something more complex, a braided stream rather than a single river. Multiple human lineages contributing to our present form, a hybrid species rather than a pure one. This challenges our deepest narratives about human uniqueness, about what separates us from other species, about the nature of humanity itself. If we are partially Neanderthal, then Neanderthals were not fundamentally different from us. The boundary between them and us blurs. These paradoxes don't weaken our understanding. They enrich it. They reveal a more complex, more interesting human story than we previously imagined. A story where simple narratives of replacement give way to nuanced patterns of interaction, exchange, and gradual transformation. As science advances, the picture grows clearer in some ways, more mysterious in others. New techniques answer old questions while raising new ones. The relationship between humans and Neanderthals emerges as one of the most fascinating chapters in our evolutionary history, a story we're still learning to read. Chapter 10. The Legacy in Our Cells. After this journey through the evidence, archaeological, genetic, environmental, we return to our central question. What really happened during that extraordinary period when Neanderthals and humans shared the Earth? And what does this lost chapter reveal about our own nature? The answer, emerging from decades of research, challenges our traditional understanding. It suggests something more profound than simple competition or replacement. Something that transforms how we view both Neanderthals and ourselves. Something written in our very cells. Neanderthals didn't simply disappear, they became part of us. Through interbreeding over thousands of years, their genes, their adaptations, perhaps even aspects of their culture were absorbed into the human lineage. Their distinctiveness gradually fading, but their legacy continuing in our genome. This wasn't a rare or isolated occurrence. Genetic evidence indicates multiple episodes of interbreeding across different regions and timeframes. A pattern of interaction spanning millennia, producing offspring who themselves had children, contributing Neanderthal heritage to future generations. The scale of this genetic exchange was significant. All non-African populations today carry approximately 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. For a 6-foot-tall person, that's 1 to 3 inches of their height coming from Neanderthal genes. A small but meaningful contribution to who we are. More importantly, these aren't random genetic fragments. Natural selection has preserved Neanderthal genes that provided advantages, particularly those helping human populations adapt to non-African environments, while eliminating variants that proved harmful, a selective incorporation of beneficial traits. This process wasn't unique to Neanderthals. Evidence now confirms humans interbred with Denisovans in Asia and possibly other archaic human species. Our emergence as a species wasn't a simple linear process, but a complex reticulation drawing together multiple human lineages. We now know with certainty that all humans alive today, outside of sub-Saharan Africa, are partially Neanderthal. We are, in a very real sense, hybrid beings, the product of multiple human species coming together. Our identity more complex than we once believed. This revelation forces us to reconsider everything: the nature of our relationship with these ancient cousins, the story of our own origins, and fundamentally, what it means to be human in a world where humanity once came in different forms, where the boundaries between those forms proved permeable. But if interbreeding was so common, why did Neanderthals as a distinct population eventually disappear? Why did the spectrum of human diversity narrow to a single species? The answer appears to lie in demographics rather than direct competition or conflict. The evidence suggests human populations were always more numerous than Neanderthal populations. Neanderthals maintained smaller group sizes with lower population density. Their total numbers may have never exceeded a few tens of thousands across all of Europe and Western Asia. When these smaller Neanderthal populations encountered the more numerous humans, when interbreeding occurred over generations, the mathematics of absorption became inevitable. Their distinctive features gradually diluted in the larger human population, a process of demographic swamping rather than replacement. This process was likely accelerated by climate fluctuations during the late Pleistocene. Rapid shifts between colder and warmer phases stressed both species. But Neanderthal populations, already smaller and less connected, may have been more vulnerable to these environmental challenges. Subtle biological differences may have also played a role. Evidence suggests Neanderthal women had longer intervals between births than human women. Even a small difference in reproductive rates would have significant demographic consequences over generations, gradually shifting the population balance. Social structure differences appear increasingly important in recent research. Archaeological evidence suggests humans maintained larger social networks than Neanderthals, trading materials over greater distances, connecting communities across wider territories, creating more resilient populations during crises. Disease may have been another critical factor. Humans migrating from Africa likely carried pathogens to which Neanderthals had no immunity. Similar to the devastating impact of European diseases on indigenous American populations millennia later, creating a biological disadvantage independent of cognitive differences. If all these factors converged, smaller initial populations, lower reproductive rates, less connected social networks, vulnerability to new diseases and climate stress, the gradual absorption of Neanderthals becomes understandable. Not a dramatic conquest, but a slow demographic process spanning thousands of years. This new understanding transforms how we should view Neanderthals, not as evolutionary failures who couldn't compete, but as a highly successful human lineage whose adaptations were valuable enough to be preserved in our genome, whose legacy continues in our biology. It also transforms how we should view ourselves, not as a pure lineage that replaced all others, but as a hybrid species, the product of multiple streams of human evolution coming together, our identity more complex, more interwoven than we once believed. What is truly remarkable about this story is the time depth. This wasn't just prehistoric interbreeding, it was interbreeding between different human species that had been separated for hundreds of thousands of years, whose last common ancestor lived perhaps 500,000 years ago. Yet despite this immense separation in time, despite evolving in different environments, developing different adaptations, they recognized each other as potential mates. They produced fertile offspring together. They found enough commonality to bridge the species boundary. This suggests a profound connection between different human forms, a recognition of kinship despite physical differences, perhaps even communication across species boundaries, hinting at the cognitive and social flexibility that may have characterized all human species. The evidence for cultural exchange reinforces this impression. Archaeological patterns suggest ideas moved between the species alongside genes. Innovations in tools, symbolic behaviors, and survival strategies appear to flow in both directions. A sharing of knowledge as well as genetic material. Imagine what this world of multiple humanities was like. Groups of different human species occasionally encountering one another, perhaps trading resources or sharing information, sometimes forming relationships that led to children of mixed ancestry, a more diverse human landscape than we can now fully comprehend. This lost world of human diversity prompts us to reconsider our place in nature. For most of human history, we've told ourselves we stand alone, the lone intelligent species on Earth, fundamentally different from all other life. But this solitary status is a very recent phenomenon. For tens of thousands of years, a time span encompassing all of recorded human history many times over, our ancestors shared the planet with other thinking beings. Other human species with their own adaptations, their own cultures, perhaps their own ways of understanding the world. This perspective humbles us, reminds us that our current solitary status as the only human species is the exception, not the rule. That the human story is more diverse, more complex than we've traditionally acknowledged. That the boundaries between human and other have always been fluid. Perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that we carry this diverse heritage within us. That we are the inheritors, not just of the Homo Sapiens lineage, but of Neanderthals too. That our identity encompasses more of human diversity than we've recognized. That in a very real sense we contain multitudes. As we close this exploration, we return to where we began, standing at the mouth of a limestone cave, looking out across an Ice Age landscape. But now, we see this world differently, not as the setting for competition between separate species, but as the crucible where our complex identity was forged. The story of Neanderthals and humans isn't confined to the distant past. It continues in our bodies, in our immune responses, in our adaptation to climate and environment, in perhaps subtle aspects of our thinking and behavior that we're only beginning to understand. When you look in the mirror, you're seeing not just Homo sapiens, but traces of Neanderthal as well. A living mosaic of multiple human lineages. A testament to the complex braiding of streams that formed the river of modern humanity. This perspective changes everything. The extinction of Neanderthals wasn't simply the replacement of one species by another. It was a gradual absorption, a blending that preserved valuable adaptations while diluting distinctive physical features. Not an ending, but a transformation. The boundaries we draw between species, between us and them, prove far more permeable than we once thought. Different human forms recognized each other as kin, despite hundreds of thousands of years of separate evolution. Found enough commonality to produce children together, to share genes, perhaps ideas. This ancient story of encounter, exchange, and ultimate merger resonates today. In a world where human differences are often magnified, where boundaries between groups can seem insurmountable, the Neanderthal legacy reminds us of our fundamental connectedness, of our shared humanity across apparent divides. Our journey into the world of 45,000 years ago, when two human species shared the Earth, reveals not just our past, but aspects of our present. Not just who we were, but who we are. A species formed through encounter and exchange. Through the meeting of different minds across time and space. Looking to the future, this understanding of our hybrid origins raises profound questions about human identity, about our relationship with difference, and about the nature of humanity itself. Questions we continue to explore as we uncover more about our complex origins. If you've enjoyed this journey into humanity's forgotten chapter, consider subscribing for more explorations of our mysterious past. What other ancient enigmas would you like us to unravel next? The shadows of prehistory still hold many secrets waiting to be illuminated.